the winter, my family stayed at our house in a small Eastern European village. The place had quite a lot of animals around it. Not just dogs and stuff, but wolves, bears, etc. In winter, it's not uncommon for them to get very close to the village and attack small animals. Also, there is a small water pump station across the field, like 1 or 2 kilometers away from the village. So one late evening, my stepbrother and I had decided to go to the station for no apparent reason, just for fun. We kinda knew about the animals, but didn't care too much. The way to the station was easy, if you don't count walking through the snow. We were joking, talking, and whatnot. When we got there, we started some music on my phone and continued to be casual. The whole environment, though, was stunning. Just an endless white field around us. No sign of people, and a full, shining moon in a crystal clear sky. Everything was so peaceful and quiet. But then something horrifying happened. Almost surreal. From the woods, about 50 meters from the pump station where we were, we heard multiple deep howls. Again, keep in mind that we are just 2 kids alone somewhat far from any people in the area. We just looked at each other, horrified, and started walking home silently, without saying a word. The way back was very intense. We constantly looked around but couldn't see anything. It was winter, so we left a pretty obvious track of footprints on the way to the station, and we were walking on the same path back home. At some point, we saw a lot of wolf tracks across our previous path perpendicularly. They were not there when we went to the station. No doubt it was a pack, and it passed here not more than 10 minutes ago. We just shit our pants even more and ran home. Nothing else happened that evening, but it was a really dangerous and scary experience. Who knows what would have happened if we ran into the pack? Back in public school, 8th grade I think, we were on a trip to a place called Durham Forest, a very nice place. Located in a largely forested area, as it should be by the name. We were there for 2 days, and it was my whole class, so shit was wild. Anyway, it was the night before we had to go home, so the counselors put together this big fire for us. By the way, this is mid-December. Halfway through the fire, I've got to go to the washroom, and so does this other dude. Now, the road from the fire to the cabin is kinda long. Forest on one side, little man-made climbing structures with the odd group of trees here and there. So me and this guy go off and head back to the cabin to use the washrooms. The walk there was fine. However, the walk back was wild. Me and this guy, let's call him T. So me and T are walking back, talking here and there, when just as we walked by a small circle of trees, there was a loud, gurgle-like noise. I can't really explain it. It sounded like a mutated gurgle. Me and T look at each other and book it. As soon as we got back to the fire, we tripped over each other from running so fast, and got in trouble by the teacher. We just kept eyeing each other from across the fire because, like, what the fuck? This happened about 13 years ago, when I was a sophomore in college, attending a liberal arts school in Suffolk County, New York. Within the first month or 2 of freshman year, I had found myself in a very tight-knit group of fellow theater geeks. 6 guys, myself included, and 1 girl. And they all loved horror movies and ghost stories. I had found my crew. Freshman year was tough, but we all held each other up and made the whole experience more enjoyable for one another. At the beginning of sophomore year, we decided that in October, as the Halloween season was ramping up, we would find a creepy, wooded spot in a nearby town some night and scare the crap out of ourselves. We did some research and found that there was a particularly isolated area about 30 minutes away, infamous for paranormal sightings. Perfect. The 7 of us split into 2 different cars and headed out into the night. Allow me to set the scene. You turn off a busy main road, flooded with strip malls and restaurants and whatnot. You are almost immediately greeted by complete darkness. Again, this area was very heavily wooded. It was essentially a large web of winding roads surrounded by trees, very few streetlights, and very few houses. Without a GPS or a good sense of direction, one could easily get lost in there. We all made sure to have fully charged phones and flashlights, just in case. But the goal was to keep driving until we collectively decided to pull over and to go exploring. So, per the directions, we made a left off of the main road, driving for 30 minutes or so into this dark network, picking directions at random, just getting intentionally lost. Our cars made a turn and, to our surprise, there was a huge log in front of us. We had reached a dead end of some kind, with nothing but trees beyond it. We all got out to see what exactly this was, stepped over the log, and noticed 2 narrow trails leading in different directions. This seemed like as good a time as any to grab our flashlights and do some amateur ghost hunting. We flipped a coin and set off on the trail to the right. The trail was so narrow that we had to walk single file to avoid getting whacked by branches. For whatever reason, I ended up in the back. I'm usually pretty rational and level-headed, but I have to say, the further we went in, the more I was overcome with an uneasy feeling. I kept hearing sounds deep in the woods, unable to shake the feeling we were being watched. But I seemed to be the only one who heard these things, so I shrugged it off as my imagination. And in any case, the whole point of us being there was to get scared. Not to mention the fact that we were 7 able-bodied college students. What would we come across that could take us down? We headed down this trail for about 20 minutes, and just when I thought it would never end, we came to a massive clearing, and I mean massive. It was a large, open field of unkempt grass, comparable in scope to a golf course, but not nearly as well manicured. Trees surrounded the entire field, which was so large, we could not see the end of it from where we were standing. I was thrilled to get out of that narrow trail, but I don't think any of us were expecting to find an area so vast. One of us looked to the right and said, "Hey, check that out." We all turned and there was an old, dilapidated house several hundred yards away. The house was completely dark with no cars or signs of anyone actually living there. We walked over and shined our flashlights at it, and sure enough, the windows and doors were all boarded up. I managed to peer between the boards on one of the windows, and what I could see was an old white couch covered in plastic, but an otherwise empty room. Whoever used to live here, they were long gone. Because there was no way in, and because we all felt sufficiently creeped out by the house anyway, we decided to walk closer to the trail we had come in from, have a seat in the field, and figure out where to go next. We walked towards the narrow trail, but before we could sit, my friend Mark stopped what he was doing. His expression dropped, and he pointed. We all turned and, on a very far side of the field, directly across from where we had come in, we could see someone tall, lanky, and pale, dancing among the trees. And by dancing, I mean it was skipping around, grabbing a tree, swinging around it, and then doing the same to another tree. Basically, a doozy-doo. The moon was so bright and the woods so dark, it actually took a second for us to really understand what we were looking at. Jay, the 6'4" skeptic of the group, wasn't seeing it. I leaned into him, pointing in that direction, and said, "Jay, look where I'm pointing. Don't you see that?" He squinted a bit, and the second that he saw it, he gasped with everything he had, clutched my arm and whispered, "What the fuck is that?" What happened next sent shockwaves through all of us. Whoever this was, they stopped dancing, looked in our direction, and started charging straight at us. Without even thinking, we freaked out and ran back to the trail. Yet again, Jay was the only one who didn't see what was happening. He shouted after us, "Guys, what is it? Where are you going?" After about 15 seconds of running like hell, I heard Jay scream, "Holy shit!" I looked back and saw his flashlight following the rest of us into the trail. While the walk into the woods took about 20 minutes, we made it back to our 2 cars, hopped in, and were peeling away in closer to 5. Once we were a safe distance away, we pulled over, got out, and checked in with each other about what just happened. My heart was pounding, and I know everyone else was feeling the same way. Nearly 15 years later, we are all still friends, living in different states, yet keeping in touch through marriages, divorces, children, etc. But occasionally, out of the blue, one of us will send a group text to the others with something to the effect of, "The woods. That really happened, right?" It most certainly did. That experience is always in the back of my mind, and I'm pretty sure it will always be. Here's the thing that still resonates with me about that night. Whoever that was, they were dancing manically in the woods at 1 in the morning, and then ran directly for a group of young adults, not at all fazed by the fact that they were severely outnumbered. Did he know we were there from the second we parked? Was he the sound that I kept hearing when we walked the trail? Whatever the case may be, when he came for us that night, you can be sure none of us wanted to stick around and see what he was truly capable of.